going. But I'm gonna try for the kingdom if I can, 'cause it makes me feel like I'm a man when I put a spike into my vein. And I tell you, things aren't quite the same when I'm rushing on my run, and I feel just like Jesus' son. And I guess that I just don't know, and I guess that I just don't know.
Hello? My name is Oswald Gardner, and I have a deadline. 10 days to be exact, to submit a finished screenplay to the studio or whoever I'm working with, and I have nothing. So, in a last-ditch effort to come up with something new, I've decided to set up some cameras around my office / bedroom / safe haven and basically film whatever comes to my head. And hopefully, whenever I'm all said and done with this project, I can use whatever footage that comes from this as some sort of a way to give me some inspiration, if you will. So that's enough exposition, so let's get this thing started. I hope you enjoy the show.
All we ever wanted was everything. All we ever got was cold. Get up, eat jelly, sandwich bars and barbed wire.
I've always been a big fan of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. I just think it's a very brilliant work of art in that it makes you think, you know? Like, does the film represent human insanity or the infiltration of electronic devices and its negative impact on us as a society? Something that kind of lingers in the back of my head is, spoiler alert, is the baby at the end of the film that's just kind of floating around in space. I've heard many different theories about what the baby symbolizes, but I've just always assumed that the baby represents human life, or really just life across all species. It's a very delicate thing, life is, and when you think about it, you're only on this planet for, honestly, I don't know the average age anymore at this point. All I know is that apparently left-handed people die quicker and women typically live longer than men. But whatever the age is, you just gotta make sure your time here doesn't go to waste, and those years go quicker and quicker as you get older, and soon enough you're out of here. We'll probably never know what happens after we die. Whether there is a heaven or hell or something else entirely. I mean, maybe it's just black. I don't know. Only time will tell. That may sound a tad dark, and possibly I overanalyze just a tad, so sorry about that. But on the same subject of life, mine started at some small hospital east of Dallas, Texas. My parents had me right out of college, and we just lived in a small one-room apartment next to a Baskin-Robbins and one of those stores that older men like to browse. We lived there for a good few years, up until my dad got a new job in Arizona. Long story, causing us to have to cram our tiny apartment into my mom's red '84 Pontiac Grand Prix and go on an adventure, sort of, across America. This may be embarrassing for me, but while we were on the road, we stopped off at this roadside play place for kids, which, honestly, it was pretty cool looking back on it. It's sand, this marble thing, a little fake neighborhood, and a totally real grocery store. And anyway, I had this stuffed animal with me, and at some point I misplaced the thing, and we left without me noticing that it was gone. Come to find out, an hour after we left, I realized that my stuffed animal, named Lloyd, by the way, had gone missing, and like any reasonable toddler, I proceeded to scream bloody murder until my dad made a U-turn and drove back to the play place, and after, say, about 45-ish minutes, we made it back to the play place. He sped, that's why we got there so fast, and we practically knocked the doors down trying to get into that place. I went over to where I thought I'd left it, being the produce aisle of the fake grocery store, and wouldn't you know it, it was not there. And in a panic, I frantically looked around, and I looked at the neighborhood and the sand pit, but it was when I looked at that damn hamster plaything, when I saw the top of Lloyd's head over the shoulder of a kid wearing a Tom and Jerry t-shirt. I stormed over there and told the kid to give me back my stuffed animal, and of course he refused. I then noticed that next to him was a dinosaur lunchbox with the name tag Preston Hill written on it. After seeing this, I asked him where he got his lunchbox, primarily as a way to throw him off. But I was also interested in where he got it because, well, dinosaurs are really cool. And so, as he starts to tell me where he got his dinosaur lunchbox, I go in for a tackle, which backfired horribly because I went toward the floor instead of, well, toward him. You can see why I'm a writer and, not a football player if my appearance didn't already tell you enough. Anyway, he sees my poor attempt at a tackle and proceeds to sit on me, all while I scream for my mom after I bonked my head on a very conveniently placed table that was just right next to him. All that I remember following that whole interaction was my mom coming in and picking me up while that bastard Preston ran off into the puppet theater to hide. Then I was placed in the car and passed out the moment I was put into my car seat, and I must have been knocked out for at least a few hours when I woke up to find that it was pitch black outside and we were in a Walmart parking lot. We couldn't afford to stay at a hotel for the night, so we just didn't have the money to do that. And so I sat there for a moment before eventually falling back asleep. Then I was placed in the car and passed out the moment I was put into my car seat, and I must have been knocked out for at least a few hours when I woke up to find that it was pitch black outside and we were in a Walmart parking lot. And we couldn't afford to get a hotel for the night because we didn't really have too much money, and we didn't really want to spend it on. And I basically just sat there for a moment before eventually falling back asleep. I knew Lloyd was gone, but I decided to not make an effort to go back for him. And even at that age, I understood that my parents didn't need the added pressure of their child's missing stuffed animal on top of everything else they already had to do. So I just let him go. That was one of the more notable stories from my childhood, I'd say. And I mean, yes, I've had all the basic experiences that young children have, like going to a park or visiting a grandparent or something. But by the time I turned 5 years old, my parents decided that it was best for everyone to separate from each other. It never really affected me much, to be honest. Like, I remember noticing that my dad wasn't around very often anymore, but I never really cared to ask. And my dad in particular, I don't have many memories of. He passed away in a work-related accident, and I remember when my mom told me about his passing, but I, again, wasn't really fazed by the whole ordeal. I mean, yes, I was sad, but it didn't really hang over me, if you will. Once he passed, my my mom and I ended up moving back to Dallas, where we lived with my grandparents for a while, and for the first few years my mom had a lot of trouble dealing with the whole thing. I remember one time, it was late at night, and I went into the kitchen for a drink or whatever, and I saw my mom quietly weeping on the couch. The first time I saw her, I walked over to her and asked her what was wrong, and she just told me not to worry about it and that everything was fine. Being a little kid, I didn't really think too much about the situation and just kind of accepted that she was okay. And after that, when I would go into the kitchen and see her on the couch, I wouldn't say anything and just go back to bed. Eventually my mom had enough, and without going into much detail, she, following this, my grandparents raised me, and I lived with them up until I went off to college. And with them around, I pretty much got to do whatever I wanted, which was good, and also a little so-so at some points. And yes, I got to stay up past my bedtime and have my friends over, which that didn't, I know it's sad, but that it didn't really happen much because I didn't really have too many friends growing up. But I had an imaginary friend, and I know it's stupid, but he was really all I had at the time and for several years when I was really little. Anyway, I'll get into that later, but sometimes things would get really out of hand with my grandparents. There was this one time shortly after they started taking care of me where my grandma left me home alone for the first time. And I had just turned 6, which she thought meant that I was old enough to stay home for a little bit. She had to go to the grocery store, so she left me home alone for what she thought would be a quick trip. And for about 3 hours, I sat in my room and played with the little trains that I had at the time. But at one point, I heard this whimpering at the front door of the house, so I went to go check it out. But the thing was, we had a dog named Toots, and so I was used to hearing him make these sounds whenever he was outside or hungry or whatever. But the thing was, Toots was with me in my room at the time that this happened. Puzzled, I went downstairs, and the sounds were still coming from the front door, and for a second I thought it was a stray dog or something of that matter, so I took a look through the peephole only to find out that the only thing out there was believe me, it was a grown man, and I had never seen this man in my entire life, so it was very jarring, to say the least. I backed away from the door, and I was very confused, and I didn't know what to do. I mostly understood the concept of stranger danger at the time, mostly thanks to the McGruff commercials that used to play on Cartoon Network. Like an idiot, I thought it would be a great idea to say "who's there" with my childlike wonder, and the sounds that the man was making abruptly stopped, but this did not last very long because only a few seconds later he began to jiggle the doorknob as an attempt to get into the house. And at this point, I was basically shitting myself with fear. I ran up to my room and dove under my bed, and he eventually gave up on the doorknob and decided to instead bang his fists into the door as hard as he could. But now in my bedroom, there's a window that is to the right of my bed when you're laying in it. And so the man, after giving up on the door, decided to go to my window and start banging on that and trying as a way to break into it. He was shouting things like, "I'm gonna kill you, little shit," and "I'm gonna..." Actually, I'm not gonna say that last one. But by some miracle, a police officer was just conveniently patrolling my neighborhood as this was happening. Long story short, as if this story wasn't already long enough, the police officer took the man down right as my grandma was coming into the driveway after her quick trip to the grocery store. And years later, I found out that the man had been stalking us and knew we had a dog. And on the day of the incident, he saw my grandma let Toots out of our front yard. And the man thought that my grandma had forgotten to let him back in. And when in reality, Toots went through his doggy door that was at the back of the house in our backyard. And the man saw this as an opportunity to make a sad attempt to trick me into letting him into the house so he could apparently steal my grandma's jewelry, like he's Black Bart or something. Personally, I'm indifferent about his testimony because of his persistence to get into the house, knowing that a 6-year-old boy was home alone with no supervision, and also his true confession on why he tried to get into the house afterwards did not help his case either.
Come she will, when streams are ripe and swelled with
Well, that was quite the therapy session, since I'm talking to a camera for something that no one will ever see, but I think this is decent enough so far, and yeah. And if there were a lesson to everything that I just talked about, then it would be to just tell whoever is close to you that you love them. Because you never know what could happen next.
And give no warning to her flight. She must. The autumn winds blow chilly and cold. September I'll remember. A love once new has now grown old.
It's kind of hot in here. Okay. So a few years ago, I wrote this little short story about a tree, and well, actually, I'm gonna read you guys some right now. You know, just because. Swap my hair real quick. Alright, here we go. Hello. I am a tree named Deku. I've been stuck in the ground at this park for the past 80 years, and it's been quite the experience. I was planted on June 5th, 1940 by a guy named Ron. Some of these people would come and visit me in the park for many years. I've seen people that were once children blossom into the adults of a new generation. My tree friends have also been around for the past 80 years. However, some have passed over time, whether it be by weather, car, or just plain bad luck. I've also met many different animals in my lifetime, like squirrels, owls, and way too many types of birds. I even have a little house inside of me that a squirrel, named Sebastian, made way back in 1964. He had the biggest family of all the animals at the park, and over time, each child lived inside of me for around a year at a time before a new squirrel would move in. Unfortunately, like many other trees, the lower half of my body has started to rot, because in the spring of 1997, a lightning bolt struck me. Over the years, it has gotten worse, with my lower area becoming thinner and thinner. Even though my time here is coming to an end, I'm glad I lived a full life. I hope that the new trees that are planted learn about Deku, the old tree that... Interesting. It looks like I never finished the ending of this short story.
Woo! Yeah! Bravo, bravo, Oswald, let's go!
Oh, that's a character I wrote for the film Sleepless Nights on a Wednesday morning.
I've just been regretting my existence and wishing I wasn't here right now. Why did you write me like this, Oswald? Why could you do this to me, Oswald? Why did you write me
Okay,
like this?
that's enough of that interaction.
Why, Oswald? Why?
by the way, that may happen every now and then, which, I mean, after all, this is a movie, so it's, you know.
Hey, Oswald.
Oh, hey, Squiggles. I drew that picture when I was a teenager, and I've just kind of held on to it ever since.
I've been watching you sleep since you were 14.
Yeah, thanks, Squiggles. I'd gone into writing when I was very young, and my grandma would tell me that when I was in first grade, I would turn over my spelling tests and write little stories about anything, like what cereal I had for breakfast that morning, or just whatever came to my head. I got into Hollywood as an actor in some low-budget movies, all while I was writing my own screenplays, really just trying to get them off the ground. At first I tried out acting, but over time I realized that it really was not my thing at all. And my final acting gig was this Broadway show I did, but once my required performances were up, I was out of there. Then again, the audience often made fun of me, but that's besides the point. The first script I managed to get produced was called In the Name of Our Sanity, a story about two people who fall in love, one having gone through the events of World War II and the other coming from a rich American family. It did all right on the film festival circuit, but after that it didn't really get much attention. I think it's because it wasn't screened in as many theaters as that I wish that it was, but that's a whole other story.
What's it got to do with us?
I don't know. I'm still just processing everything that went down.
It has been 5 years since the war ended. Why can't you just get along with it? You don't understand. You were not there. You did not experience firsthand what that man brought upon us. Okay, listen, I get it. You don't. Sometimes I can't stand people like you. People that go around and act like they know how people feel in dire situations they weren't even around for. I understand expressing sympathy for someone who has gone through a similar experience, and sometimes people who haven't shared an experience can still be helpful and reassuring, but when you're spitting out phrases like, oh, it's no big deal, and you've never been through any sort of hardship in your life, it makes it very hard to take any of what you say seriously.
After In the Name of Our Sanity, I wrote what many considered to be my best screenplay, which personally I think most of them are terrible, but whatever is called our favorite. It follows a guy who has had several run-ins with the law for various reasons, but all while this is happening, he is trying to make a difference in the world. How often do you think about doing your laundry? Well, probably every Sunday. Why are you asking? Just wondering. Do you separate your laundry? By color? Like, do you put all the whites and grays in one load and then all the reds, blues, and blacks in another? I separate them now. Why do you keep asking me questions about how I do my laundry? I mean, I'm just curious about how other people do laundry. I think it's important to just mix all your laundry together so that way you can get it done quicker. I get your point, but even if you do that, people still won't be happy with the results of the load. Like, it's kind of a lose-lose situation for both people that like to mix their laundry and those who like to separate their laundry. You know, I think it would be cool if somebody created a laundry machine where you could just mix all your clothes together and everyone would be happy with the result. That would be pretty cool, but that'll likely never happen. Fast forward a few years and a few screenplays later, my confidence has gotten smaller and smaller, as after my most recent screenplay, Where Do I Go in the Grand Scheme of Things, has still gone unproduced for well over a year now, and I've gone all around Hollywood trying to get someone to produce it, but I haven't found anyone who wants to.
My knowledge turns into my
Oh my god.
Looking back, I can see why people passed on it. Well, that's history. The purpose of all that was just to show you my writing style, and I mean, sort of. Those were just the better parts of some of my shit screenplays, but anyway. What even is the proper way to write a story? You know, it's like, when you think about it, there's a lot that really goes into it, but when you're actually writing the thing, you don't really think about it. Yes, I do think that some writers think about every word before writing it, but some just kind of let it happen by chance. Like, before writing this one screenplay I had written a few years back, I had no idea I was going to mention the 1903 Iroquois theater disaster that killed over 600 people, most of them being children, and then there's the chance that there will be nothing. Chance also applies to other things besides writing. It's like when you're about to make a decision and all the possibilities go through your head, and then you narrow it down to two and have to pick which one is better. For instance, say you're walking down the street. It's a wonderful kind of day. If you can learn to work and play and get along with each other.
And I say, hey!
Okay, that's enough. Anyway, you're just walking down the street, thinking about whatever you think about when you're, walking down the street. And you come across a coffee shop and you're all like, hey!
Hey!
You don't exist! Okay, so you go into the coffee shop, and I'm just gonna say Starbucks. You go into the Starbucks and smell coffee, I guess, hits you in the face, and you get in line, and the poor barista named Sandra is being yelled at by some angry white woman named Mackenzie about her mocha mint grande, whatever some shit, I don't care. As this goes on, you look at the menu and see the strawberry and green tea frappuccino. You then think to yourself, now, I do like strawberries, but one of my friends told me that it doesn't have real strawberries and that the government is lying to me. But then there's the green tea frappuccino that looks fun, but I had it once and it tasted like ass. Suddenly, Mackenzie storms out of the Starbucks with a free $50 gift card, and now it's your turn to order. So, if I were to pick between fake strawberries, the government is lying to me, or drink liquid ass again, I would, A teary-eyed Sandra then asks if you're ready to order. Shit. Let's just go with the strawberry one. You order the strawberry frappuccino after that heated debate you had with yourself in your head, and 4.5 minutes later, you get the thing and leave the Starbucks. Then, you're walking down the street. You're enjoying the $5 strawberry frappuccino that you just got when suddenly you begin to regurgitate on the strawberries that just accidentally just slipped down your throat too fast. And then before you know it, you're going into cardiac arrest in front of a rock and roll sushi. Your last thought before you inevitably die is,
I should have just gotten the strawberry frappuccino.
and then you're gone. That is what taking a chance is. You took a chance on the strawberry frappuccino, and now you're dead. You could have taken a chance on the green tea frappuccino, but instead, you died an embarrassing death in front of a bunch of hipsters. You still would have likely died from drinking the green tea frappuccino, if I'm being honest, but not as quickly. Hell, maybe you would have still gotten the strawberry frappuccino and survived if they hadn't put that one extra strawberry in it. Everything is a chance. just gonna tell a couple more stories and I'll be out of here. I feel like it hasn't been that long. Like, I swear, I'm trying to make a film and I really hope it's not 20 minutes, but whatever. Okay, so this one time a few years ago, I got into a whole debacle with this one guy I used to call my friend, and I had known him for several years, and the whole situation as well. Well, it's on the fence of being stupid, and no, it's just stupid. Anyway, to set the stage, if you will, you got me, Oswald, and this other guy. I was gonna give him some made-up name, but I'm just gonna say his real name. His name was Philip, Phil for short. So Phil was like one of those people, you know, like one of those people in middle school that would, whenever you would say something funny in class, they would just say it louder, and more people would laugh, or like one of those people who will repeat the same thing over and over again just to get a reaction, all while everyone heard them the first time. If I'm being honest, I'm actually a little guilty of that last one occasionally. But anyway. But there's the two of us, right? And we started off as really close friends, and we did just about everything together, and we were pretty much inseparable. But growing up in Dallas with my grandparents, I didn't really have many friends besides my imaginary friend Max. But Phil was one I had met by chance. My grandpa asked me if I wanted to run a Target with him, and I wasn't really feeling it. And now, this was right after the time my grandma left me home alone, so obviously my grandpa wasn't going to let that happen again. So he did what anyone would do to get a rowdy kid to go to the store with him. He promised to take me out for ice cream afterwards. Those words lit my brain up faster than acid, I'm telling you, and before I knew it, we were already in the car and on our way to Target. We get there and just started shopping as usual until I inevitably got bored and asked my grandpa if I could just go back to the toy aisle. We get there and just started shopping as usual until I inevitably got bored and asked my grandpa if I could go look at the toy aisle, and he obliged, so I made my way over to what was literally the Disney World of toy aisles. I'm telling you, they had so many toys back there, but my main goal was to look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figures that they had, and maybe I could convince my grandpa to get me one if I were lucky. But as I was walking into the TMNT section, the new Lego Batmobile at the time caught my eye, so I decided to take a detour over to the Lego aisle, and when I got there, I just stood in front of the case for a moment, just looking at the thing, and when suddenly a football just comes out of nowhere and hits me right in the back of the head. The force of the football caused my head to smash straight into the display case of the Lego Batmobile, kind of like a kind of thing, I don't know. And I hit the ground, and surprisingly, I didn't cry, and I was a bit whiny growing up, but I got up and looked around expecting to see God or something when this kid came out of nowhere and ran right into me, causing the two of us to fall to the ground. But we sit up, and I noticed that he has a shirt with the letter P on it, and I asked him why he would have a shirt with a P on it, and he said that he likes to wear it because his name is Philip. And my first thought was, okay, that's kind of odd, before asking him about the football that hit me in the back of the head, and he said that he was just throwing it around just because. And now I thought that was a great explanation, so I asked him if he wanted to be my friend, and he agreed. And so after that, I asked him if he wanted to go get some ice cream with my grandpa and I. He said that he needed to ask his mom first, so he disappeared for a minute or two, and eventually came back and told me that he could go get ice cream with us. And that was the day a failed friendship started. We did this for a few years until I got my first girlfriend, and she ended up taking a lot of my time, so I didn't get to do much with Phil. Some of our friends said that she was like a Yoko to our friendship, which I just kind of ignored. And that's around the time I started really writing my own stuff without Phil, and I think he did the same. And whenever we did get together to write, we would end up arguing over little things, and which was something that we never really did before that point. Gradually, over time, we saw each other less and less until we got to our senior year in high school, where we barely spoke to each other. I tried to make amends with our friendship, so I asked if he wanted to come over to my house to write again, and he thought to himself for a moment before agreeing to come over, and later that night he came over and we talked for a minute about random junk before we started writing. And the short film we started writing about was about relationships, and it followed a male protagonist and his issues with himself and others around him. So we wrote for a few hours and all was well, and we finished writing the short film, and I was set as designated director on the project, and he leaves without saying much, and that was the last time we both worked together. This took place in April, and we graduated in May, so we didn't have much more time together, and I tried to get the project off the ground, but no one was available, so it went unproduced. Phil, to me, then became another face in the hallway, and like he already had for some time up to that point. And then we graduated, and I haven't seen him at least in a good-ish setting since. Several years after we graduated, my film career had already taken off, so I decided to rework what Phil and I wrote that day into our favorite, and I changed it up quite a bit and labeled it as my own without getting permission from Phil, and the film came out and had some success, and the next thing I knew, Phil was back in my life, and only this time he was very furious, and he claimed that I had completely taken his work and tried to pass it off as my own. I thought I completely reworked his writing into something completely different, but he didn't see it that way, and it was a tough legal battle that lasted about a year or so, and the judge ruled in my favor because he believed that I had changed it enough to where it was just by me, and Phil, who I think had just given up at that point, accepted the results, and like in high school, he once again disappeared out of my life. I can't help but feel bad for him because he had already been trying to get his name off the ground in the film industry to little to no success, and now this case is going to be forever attached to his name. I probably shouldn't have said what I said earlier about him, but that's in the past now, and we're in the present. It's funny how that works with people you know or don't know. Like, you could see them one instance and, well, never again. Like, this one time I was on a flight to LA and I saw this guy with a little girl who was probably about 3 or less. I assume they are father and daughter because, well, I mean, you know, whatever. Anyway, the dad had a drawing pad with him and he was just sketching random things on it, and his daughter eventually started getting upset, so he put her in his lap and let her doodle with him on it. That moment has always stuck with me, and sooner than later we landed and we went our own separate ways, but it's different when you actually make friends with the person sitting next to you. Like, I met this one older gentleman on a flight, and we talked nearly the whole time about our careers and life in general, and he told me some really good advice during the flight, something that I really needed at that time and still do to some degree. But he told me, as cheesy or corny that it may sound, but I don't really care. He told me that I need to pursue what makes me the most happy, and that I don't have to make or do something that for the sole purpose of appealing to others, and to just do what I truly wanted to do. And like every plane interaction, we landed and we had to go our separate ways, and the last thing he said to me was to have a good life before getting his luggage and leaving as fast as he arrived. But the sad part about this to me is that I never got his name, and I never got to thank him the way I wish I had, and I just hope he's doing good. Crazy. If I'm being honest with you guys, I am not feeling the greatest at the moment. I just, never mind. It's not important. Okay. I'll tell this one story, and that may be it. Hopefully. So, all right. Let's just set the mood. Over here I got my record collection. You can't see it, oh well. And it mainly consists of a bunch of music that I've been listening to since the 7th grade, as well as some that I've acquired from thrift stores and whatnot. And so, but there's this one record that I think will set the tone for this next story perfectly. Well, apparently I don't have the record I'm looking for like I thought, so I'm just gonna imagine that the song is playing in my head, and for those of you watching, I'll probably play it in post if I even finish this garbage. But okay, so setting the scene, it's the 1940s, and let's just say New York. Actually, hold on. I want those of you watching to visualize the story as I read it, so please close your eyes and try your best to visualize what I'm describing. And don't fall asleep. Alright, you may close your eyes. Okay, I have to read off of this. I don't remember it from the top of my head. Where am I? Okay. Okay, so setting the scene again, it's 1940s New York, and you're a detective working in some lowbrow detective place, whatever it's called, I don't know. And a distraught individual comes in asking for a detective, and you ask them what's wrong. They claim that they just saw a murder take place and that they need a detective. The first thought in your head is, why didn't you just go get an officer? But you decide to help them anyway because that's your job. You ask them where they were once the incident occurred, and they say that they were at the waterfront. You get in your old-timey vehicle and make your way over to the waterfront, and you arrive at the waterfront, and no one is there. You investigate the place and take a few notes of the area. The creaking sound then catches your attention. This startles you, but you don't think much of it. You go to investigate the sound as you think it is nothing more than an animal. You think you heard the sound coming from a crate located on the west side of the waterfront. Since you don't have a flashlight, your only sense of vision is from the city lights creating a slight glimpse of light. The lights illuminate your way towards a pile of wooden crates. You get in front of the... Keep visualizing, keep going. The crates. And there's a slight crack in one of them. You then begin to slowly move your head toward the crack. Then you hear a new sound behind you. The sound is splashing. Now concerned, you go over to the water all while the splashing continues. You get closer and begin to hear the sounds of a baby gurgling. You look in the water. Nothing comes out. What you see in the water has removed your ability to scream. You stare at the water for a moment, deep in thought. You try to run. You try to scream when suddenly... Hey! I'm so over this. I'm so unbelievably... I just want to quit right now. You know what? I haven't really talked about my imaginary friend that I had when I was little. His name is Max. I may have already said that, but I don't care anymore. I'm gonna make some room for him really quickly, actually. Okay. Yeah. He's a bit shy, so I'll introduce him to everyone. His name's Max. I already said that. He likes Kraft macaroni and cheese, Thomas the Tank Engine, and playing at the park. I mean, what did you expect? I told you I created this thing when I was like a child, so this... Anywho, he came into my life right after my dad died, and he served as really my only friend up until I met Phil. But as I got older, he kind of just phased in and out of my life. Max helped me a lot throughout my early life, and dealing with the passing of my parents and overall struggles I faced that were out of my control. Whenever I felt down about myself or the things going on around me, I would go to a comfort movie or song. Some of my favorite comfort movies were, what's it called? Nobody cares about that. Why am I even, okay. But my favorite comfort song and just song in general, or both of our, whatever, was this one. We would always listen to it together, and my grandparents never really understood the whole imaginary friend thing, but I didn't really care. At our dining room table, whenever we got together to eat, we had 4 chairs at the table, and there were only 3 of us, so that once empty chair that used to belong to my mom became Max's new seat. Max was also great in that he would always listen to everything I had to say, and I knew I could always go to Max whenever I felt upset, and because despite no one being able to see him, I could always see him. Max helped me a lot with my I think I said this, but he helped me with my grandparents too. Because I'm honestly surprised I didn't mention this before, but when I was a teenager, my grandpa got really sick, and by that point, I hadn't seen Max in a while, but he came back. Max would go with my grandma and I to the hospital, and kind of like how he would in the past, and it was like nothing had changed since I was little. What am I doing, Max? Why are you back? Is it because I'm stressed that you came back, Max? I can't believe I lied to the judge. Why did I lie to the studio and say I had something to submit to them? I wanted to do this project as a way to come up with something before my pitiful career implodes on itself, and it's just become one long therapy session where I tell bullshit stories that don't mean anything to anyone but me, and I hate myself. I care too much about what other people think, don't I? I'm such a failure. How did I even get here, Max? Why didn't you help me, Max? You never have. This is just another failed project that they'll hate as much as the other. I'm the reason I'm like this. It's my fault, isn't it? I just don't want to accept anything. That I'm wrong and I've always been wrong. Remember when I was left alone, Max? You allowed me to do that. You just let it happen. You knew it was happening and you did nothing!
You goddamn non-existent son of a bitch, you ruined me! You ruined me! You ruined me! I ruined me!
Too alarming now to talk about. Take those pictures down, check it out. Truth or consequence, say it aloud. Use that evidence, race it around. There goes my hero, watch him as he goes. There goes my hero, watch him as he goes.
Wake from your sleep, the drying of your tears. Today we escape, we escape.
That brings us to the end of the film. I've said enough and done enough, and I've seen it all. Sorry if that last part threw anyone off. I had just been bundling that up for a while. It's odd, you know? Going into this project, I kind of had an idea about how this would be structured, but now since I'm at the end, I don't really know how I should send this off. You know what, actually? Throughout my life, I've experienced several things. Love, fun, heartbreak, death. But it feels as though I learn something new every day. Don't get me wrong, some of these days I'm sitting at my desk, writing, or out and about in the world, but I've found that I've probably learned more from the art people I've made. That's what I learn from. And that's how I learn. From art. I'd say that the old man was right. Despite everything I've gone through, I have lived a good life.